In my previous life, my husband, the war god, perished in a divine demonic war, his immortal body obliterated from existence. Night and day I tirelessly journeyed, scouring every hidden land for rare treasures, all to gather the scattered fragments of his soul and rebuild his physical form. Just as I lay critically injured, confined to my bed after a brutal encounter with a guardian beast, my deceased husband suddenly returned, accompanied by a mortal woman who already carried his child. He used the precious treasures I had painstakingly collected to nourish the mortal woman's fragile body, and fearing she couldn't withstand the influx of divine power, he cruelly extracted my immortal bones to fashion an immortal frame for his beloved. Once I was devoid of any usefulness, he heartlessly cast me into the lower realms, where I was devoured by demonic beasts. It was then that I learned that my husband had fallen in love with that mortal woman during a clandestine visit to the mortal realm. His feigned death was not only a ploy to be with that mortal woman but also a scheme to use me as a stepping stone for her ascension. Fate must have had pity on me, as I was reborn at the very moment I received the news of my husband's supposed death. A cold smile graced my lips as I sought out the divine Lord. My husband has passed away, and I dare not presume to hold on to his divine title. I implore the divine Lord to revoke his divine status, thus fulfilling his wish to serve the heavenly court. When I opened my eyes again, my legs buckled and I nearly collapsed. The horrifying scenes from my death were still vivid. In my previous life, my war god husband Caspian had perished in a divine demonic war, his life snuffed out on the battlefield. I had spent countless days weeping, beseeching all the gods and deities, until I finally learned that his soul could be retrieved using the celestial quartz treasure, the soul-gathering bell. However, the bell's use was incredibly demanding, requiring numerous celestial treasures. I traveled far and wide, desperately trying to find the last ingredient, the 7-star grass, needed to rebuild Caspian's body. The spirit beast guarding the 7-star grass had cultivated for thousands of years and was incredibly powerful. I fought tooth and nail, suffered a shattered core, and severely injured my celestial soul, but eventually, I managed to gather all the necessary treasures. Yet, while I was lying on my sickbed at death's door, my war god husband Caspian returned unscathed, hand in hand with a timid mortal woman. "Caspian, she's bleeding so much I'm scared." The woman cowered in Caspian's embrace, as if she had been mistreated. The joy of knowing Caspian was alive froze on my face. "Caspian, who is she?" Caspian looked coldly at my wasted form. "Faye, did you actually consider yourself my wife? Lena is not like you. You only admired my reputation as a war god, but she loves the real me." Caspian drew Lena into his arms, while the latter bashfully lowered her head. "Caspian, it's all my fault for having this frail body, and not being able to stay by your side forever." Caspian held her tightly, comforting her softly. "Lena, don't worry. She collected all the elixir and treasures, we can use them to benefit you. She destroyed her core and is no longer worthy of immortal bones. I will give you hers so you can live by my side." My eyes blazed with fury as I struggled to rise from my bed. "You, a celestial deity, resorting to such underhanded tactics for a mortal, even attempting to commit deicide?" He kicked me away disgusted. "What are you? It is an honor that your filthy bones can provide even the slightest help to Lena." With that, he attacked me. I spat out a mouthful of blood. "Caspian, the heavens will not forgive you." Caspian struck again, shattering the bones in my chest. No amount of resentment could make me utter another word. My immortal bones were extracted alive. With barely a breath left in my body, my husband tossed me into the lower realms. I was devoured by demonic beasts, and even my corpse was not left intact. Fortunately, the heavens took pity on me and gave me a second chance. A commotion broke out in the distance. The palace maids, their faces grief-stricken, knelt down immediately upon seeing me, urging me to mourn. Feigning disbelief, I stumbled toward the divine messenger, my eyes red with tears. "Tell me again, what happened to my husband?" The war god was ambushed by the demons and suffered fatal wounds. His body was completely destroyed. "Please, war goddess, mourn his passing." Upon hearing this, I staggered back and collapsed to the ground, weeping loudly. In my heart, though, I was smiling. Fate had actually allowed me to be reborn at this very moment. Caspian, I thought, in this life you will never be the fortunate war god. You can go be immortal instead. In my feigned grief, I had the entire war god's mansion draped with white cloth and mourning banners. I ordered all servants to wear white and observe a 3-month period of mourning. My husband was a war god of the heavenly court and had made countless contributions to the heavens. Now that he is gone, I will not allow the world to forget his sacrifice. I sent out mourning invitations to all the celestial families, announcing that I would be organizing a grand funeral for the war god. My mother-in-law, who had just returned to the mansion, was furious at the sight of the mourning decorations. She stormed into my courtyard, ready to confront me. She slapped me across the face and I feigned weakness, staggering backward. Tears instantly filled my eyes. Faye doesn't know what I have done wrong to upset mother so. My mother-in-law trembled with rage, pointing a finger at me. You little hussy, you have the audacity. My son is a war god, and you dare curse him to death. My mother-in-law had been immortal. After Caspian became an immortal through a stroke of fate, he used his merits to petition the gods to bring her to the heavenly court to enjoy a life of ease. But after so many years, she still retained her crude mortal ways. I clutched my chest, weeping bitterly. Mother, please don't get upset. My husband has fallen in battle. My mother-in-law instinctively retorted, reaching out to scratch me. You're talking nonsense. My son is obviously. She suddenly stopped as if realizing something. I wiped away my tears, observing her expression out of the corner of my eye. Mother, is there perhaps something you are not telling me? She immediately realized her mistake and awkwardly retracted her hand. Then she suddenly burst into tears, sobbing loudly. My son, my son. I patted my mother-in-law's back soothingly, softly comforting her. Don't worry, mother. Your son may be gone, but I'm still here. As long as I am alive, I will not let the war god's mansion fall. I have already sent out mourning invitations. I will definitely organize a grand farewell ceremony for my husband. My mother-in-law was shocked and subconsciously grabbed my sleeve. Who told you to spread such things everywhere? You are clearly trying to tarnish my son's reputation. Mother, how can you say that? I just don't want the heavenly court to forget the war god's glory. Besides, we have hundreds of mouths to feed in this mansion. Without some income, it will be hard to maintain things. I knew my mother-in-law well. She was greedy and concerned about petty gains. Even though the funeral would disrupt her son's plans, the mention of gifts from celestial families made her eyes light up. Then let's do it your way. I supported her to the main hall, and once the celestial guests were seated, I rose and made a toast with tea. Squeezing out a few tears, I stood in the center of the hall, draped in white mourning garments, looking pale and utterly distraught. Faye thanks all of you celestial beings for coming to pay your respects. My husband was a war god of the heavenly court and achieved countless feats. There is another important matter for which I invited everyone here today. I produced a memory stone which replayed Caspian's voice. Faye, my old injuries are not healed. This divine demonic war may be my end. If I do not return, please revoke my divine status. Don't hinder any worthy mortals who aspire to immortality. My mother-in-law, who was happily counting the treasures and elixirs brought by the guests, suddenly grew enraged. She charged at me, yelling, "You vile woman! You are trying to harm my son!" I silently cast a silencing spell on her, and the servant girl I had already arranged grabbed onto her to keep her still. Finally things quieted down. I knelt down, my voice trembling with grief. I beseech all of you celestial beings to be witnesses. Accompany me to the star-picking tower to revoke my husband's divine status, fulfilling his last wish. The declaration caused a stir among the guests. The divine status was similar to a mortal's household registration. Once revoked, the deity would lose all of their divine powers and become as good as a mortal. For thousands of years, many gods and deities had fallen, but no one had ever actively requested their divine status be revoked. The reason was simple. Even without a body, their divine soul could still wander and have the chance of meeting a mortal and having the opportunity to rebuild their body and return to their previous rank. Though the chance was slim, there was still hope. But with the divine status gone, One would become a complete mortal and forever stay immortal no matter how many times one was reincarnated. Since everyone was accustomed to being deities, no one was willing to become mere mortals. While the celestial beings were surprised by the news, they expressed their admiration for Caspian's benevolence. I laughed inwardly. My mother-in-law had now broken free and pushed me roughly, causing me to fall backward on the stairs, my forehead striking the stone steps. I bled profusely. I looked at her pitiably, tears streaming down my face. Faye does not know what I did wrong that caused Mother to hurt me so badly in front of everyone. Unable to speak, my mother-in-law could only lash out with her hands, kicking me. Divine Lord Lyra, standing on the side, couldn't bear to watch. She restrained my mother-in-law with a spell, preventing her from moving, and helped me get up. I leaned weakly on her, looking like a pitiful victim. My mother-in-law struggled and made muffled noises. I quickly released the silencing spell on her, looking guilty. "I am sorry, Mother. I didn't notice that you had a spell on you. Please punish me." "Mother, I have told you many times, you should never practice spells yourself when I am not around. What would you do if you hurt yourself?" My mother-in-law spat out a mouthful of phlegm on the white jade floor, causing many celestial beings to frown. Their gazes toward my mother-in-law were filled with disapproval. "You little hussy. I should have never let Caspian marry you. Not only did you fail to serve my son, but you dare to spread rumors here. When did my son ever say he wanted to erase his divine status?" I felt wronged. Tears welled up in my eyes as I presented the memory stone. "Mother, how would your daughter-in-law dare to lie to you? These are Caspian's own words." "Nonsense. Caspian never mentioned a thing to me about speaking to you about this." My mother-in-law continued to argue, but she was interrupted by the other celestial beings. "Old lady, what is wrong with Faye trying to fulfill her husband's last wish? Why are you making things difficult for her? Indeed, we witnessed the war god's demise with our own eyes, and the memory stone is here as proof. Besides, it's impossible for the war god to tell you everything. Lady Faye is the one who was always by his side." "Humph, this old hag is acting like a low-class shrew. She always harasses her daughter-in-law. It's an insult to the heavenly court to have such a vulgar person here." The last remark came from the young disciple of the elixir deity, known for his bluntness and for often offending others. Since his master was the elixir deity, no one wanted to offend someone who supplied them with medicinal herbs. As a result, they always had his back. However, my mother-in-law, who had lived a life of luxury in the mortal realm, had become accustomed to not being contradicted because of her war god's son. She could not take this insult. She charged forward, intending to pinch his ear like she did to children. The elixir deity's disciple wasn't about to take that lying down. He kicked her leg. Chaos broke out. At that moment, a powerful voice came from the entrance of the main hall. "Who is making such a disturbance here?" The man who entered wore a dragon crown and a brocade robe. It was the heavenly emperor himself. "I have heard that the war god wishes to relinquish his divine status to benefit those who seek immortality. He is a model for the heavenly court. I have come today to lead the celestial beings to the star-picking tower, to witness the divine status revocation." With the heavenly emperor speaking, even the most arrogant would not dare to speak up. To have a fake death scheme under the nose of the heavenly emperor was an act of deceiving the king. I feigned the grief of a wronged wife who lost her husband, while inwardly I was laughing. The emperor was someone I sent a messenger to invite, under the guise of asking for his presence for a grace, but in reality I was trying to have him be a witness. With the emperor here, there was no escaping the revocation of Caspian's divine status. Caspian had grown too powerful and arrogant, making him a problem for the emperor. In my last life, had I not managed his relationships, he would have been eliminated. But he was unappreciative and accused me of caring only for his title as a war god. In this life, I was going to watch how far Lena would tolerate him once his status was gone and he was nothing. My mother-in-law, unable to argue with the heavenly emperor, could only glare at me with venomous eyes. While she no longer posed a threat to me, that familiar gaze sent a shiver down my spine. In my previous life, my mother-in-law was aware of Caspian's plan to fake his death and had even secretly met Lena in an attempt to win over Caspian's heart, was subservient to my mother-in-law, who was very pleased with this obedient daughter-in-law. I thought I had treated my mother-in-law well in the celestial realm, always ensuring she was taken care of and had the best elixirs. The maids allocated to her were the most considerate and understanding. However, she always believed that I was being arrogant because of my celestial status. When I lost my powers and became a useless person, she did everything she could to torment me. When she was in a good mood, she had the maids drag me to the pond in the yard, toss me in and out, making me want to live more than anything else. When she was in a bad mood, she experimented with mortal tortures on me, using hot irons to brand my face and needles to pierce my fingers. She even made a bed of nails and forced me to roll on it. Whenever I was about to breathe my last, she would use the elixirs I had previously sent her and revive me, just to keep me alive. This little hussy can't die so easily. It would disrupt Caspian's plan. I thought Caspian would be my savior, but instead he took my bones, turning me into a useless wreck. Thinking of that, I looked at my mother-in-law, my eyes burning with hatred, wishing I could skin her alive and pull out her tendons to ease the anger in my heart. My mother-in-law was, after all, just a mortal woman, who had never experienced the intense oppression and killing intent of a deity. She was so frightened that her legs gave out and she fell to the ground, soiling her skirts. The heavenly emperor was disgusted by such a sight. He ordered the maids to escort her away to be taken care of. She was forbidden from attending the divine status revocation. Even as she was being dragged away, my mother-in-law continued to glare at me with resentment, but I only felt relief. In the star-picking tower were countless jade tablets, each with the name of a deity on it. Once Caspian's tablet was removed and thrown into the reincarnation well, it would turn to dust, and his divine status would be gone forever. I watched the immortal Lord remove Caspian's jade tablet, trembling with excitement. Soon, Caspian would receive his karmic retribution. Hasty footsteps and shouting interrupted the action of the immortal Lord. Your Majesty, there is someone outside the gates of the celestial court claiming to be the war god, and he looks exactly like the deceased war god. The immortal Lord, who was holding the jade tablet, froze. He was unsure whether he should toss the tablet into the reincarnation well. He turned to the emperor for instruction. My mind raced. I would not let Caspian have any possibility to turn things around. I pinched my thigh harshly. A sharp pain made a tear fall down my cheek. Then, I knelt in front of the emperor and cried with utter sincerity. Your Majesty, the death of my husband is something that all celestial beings have witnessed. It was reported by the messenger on the battlefield. My husband was the war god of the heavenly court, and he made countless contributions to the realm. I don't ask for any rewards, I just wish that my husband can leave in peace. Who would have thought such a brazen villain would try to steal my husband's identity? Please, Your Majesty, do what is right. The emperor was pleased with my cooperation. He nodded slightly at the immortal Lord, and ordered the celestial servants to bring in the audacious impostor. When Caspian and Lena walked into the main hall, hand in hand, they saw the immortal Lord toss Caspian's jade tablet into the reincarnation well. To watch his divine status destroyed was indeed a murder of the heart. Your Majesty, I did not perish. I was only severely injured and fell into the mortal realm. Fortunately, I was rescued by this fair lady. I fought for the celestial court for 100 years. I have made contributions as well as hard work. I am curious as to why my divine status is being revoked. Caspian was furious, but he knew that the emperor was the only one who could help him. He swallowed his anger and waited. Caspian's displeasure was my pleasure. Seeing him being forced to eat his own words was better than cultivating for 1,000 years. The emperor scoffed, and with a wave of his sleeve, a powerful pressure was released. The others with divine power were unharmed. However, Caspian's divine status had been revoked, and his divine power was quickly fading. He could not withstand the pressure. He fell on his knees, blood streaming from his mouth and nose. And for Lena, a mere mortal, it was even worse. Caspian watched helplessly as his beloved suffered. His eyes turned red with rage, and he started shouting at the emperor. I protected the heavenly court, putting my life on the line for you, you old dog. This is how you repay your loyal subjects. I was shocked. I knew Caspian was a reckless and arrogant fool, but I never expected him to be so foolish that he could not tell the difference in their statuses. As expected, the emperor was enraged. All the celestial beings lowered their heads, fearing that they would be implicated. Bastard! Not only did you impersonate one of my loyal subjects, but you dare to speak to me in such a manner. Guards! Take this arrogant mortal to the heavenly prison. He will be banished to the lower realms tomorrow as an example. As for the mortal, send her back to where she came from. I pretended to be terrified, lowering my head to the ground watching the emperor leave. I was actually laughing on the inside. Caspian, your good days are over. The prison had heavy security, but I had developed a good rapport with the guards. I had given them some treats a few times and they agreed to let me visit for a bit. The guards knew my fragile frame wouldn't cause any waves and urged me to hurry. I wandered around the prison until I found Caspian in the deepest part. He was bound by chains, his collarbones held in place by shackles. So miserable. But it was not enough for the suffering he put me through. I came closer to the bars. Caspian, look who has come to see you. Caspian struggled to open his blood-caked eyes. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and he rushed to grab the bars. Faye, save me. You must know it's me. We are the closest people in the world. I smelled the stench of his body and recoiled, covering my nose. He was stunned by my actions. It was as if he never thought I would treat him this way. I know it's really you, Caspian. I also know you didn't die. Seeing me speak, his eyes lit up with hope. He nodded repeatedly. Yes, I didn't die. Faye, quickly think of a way to get me out. You not only didn't die, but you planned everything, keeping a pampered girl in the mortal realm to satisfy your ego, while being the prestigious war god in the heavens. And I am just a stepping stone in your plan. His face turned twisted. You know. There's no need to pretend. Faye, you are an intelligent woman. Let me out and you can have a chance to be with Lena and serve me. Don't you want my love? Save me and you can always be the war goddess. I looked at him like he was a donkey. I laughed so hard that he was startled. His expression slowly went from surprise to anger. Why do you think I would help you? After you planned to give my bones to your mortal princess. Remembering the tragic events of my past life, my tone grew more and more furious. You do not love me, you could have divorced me and then stayed with Lena. But why did you have to destroy me? I used my magic to restrain him, and then broke open his mouth to feed him a pill that I had prepared. This pill will paralyze you, turning you into a useless cripple. And your blood will become a fatal lure to the demonic beasts in the lower realms. You should have a taste of what I went through. Caspian was both angry and horrified. He struggled in vain. I paid no attention to his desperate cries. I laughed coldly as I left the prison. Waiting for Caspian was the thunder and lightning on his way to the lower realm, and the countless mouths of the lower realm beasts. I had gotten half of my revenge. I felt so relieved. When I arrived home, I was greeted by my mother-in-law, who had been waiting for me. The first thing she did when she saw me was curse and attack me. Mother-in-law, did you think I was the same person as in the past? The one who let you abuse me because I wanted the love of my husband? I stopped her hand before she slapped me. I grabbed her wrist tightly, then threw her away. I had secretly used magic on her. She was just a mortal. She could not stand properly and fell on the ground, looking at me in disbelief. I chuckled. Even her son was destroyed by me. Taking care of her was simple. I was going to make her taste the bitter fruits she had created in my past life. I pulled out a handkerchief and wiped my hand, looking disgusted at my mother-in-law. What are you doing on the ground? Can't you stand up on your own? You are a mortal, and you dare to attack a celestial being. I have been very tolerant, because you are my mother-in-law. Now that my husband has passed, I will not let a mother like you tarnish his name. My mother-in-law thought that I was still the same old softy that she could manipulate. She started screaming and crying on the floor. Oh heavens, there is no justice. This unfilial little hussy is taking advantage of my son's death to bully me. I am not going to live. With a nod, the maids took her away. You were disrespectful at the palace before, offending the emperor. The emperor spared your life. Now you are still pointing fingers at me. In my past life, I had treated my mother-in-law with diligence, always caring for her and treating her like my own mother. But who would have thought that she would accuse me of flaunting my celestial status? In this life, I was going to make her see the difference between mortals and deities. Lock her in the dilapidated hut in the back. I don't want anyone to see this farce. My mother-in-law's eyes widened and she pointed at me, trembling. How dare you? When my son comes back, I will make him tear you apart. I couldn't help but chuckle. I walked closer and whispered in her ear. Good mother. Are you talking about the lowly mortal who tried to steal his identity at the star-picking tower? Did you know that he angered the emperor and he has been sent to the heavenly prison? He will be executed tomorrow. My mother-in-law's pupils constricted. She lashed out at me again. It's you. You hussy. You harmed my son. I shrugged my shoulder and asked the maids to carry her away. I knew it was my mother-in-law who notified Caspian and allowed him to show up at the star-picking tower. And it was all thanks to her that Caspian had walked into my trap. Otherwise, even if he became immortal, I do not know what he would have done with his evil mind. It was best to cut the weeds from the roots. My mother-in-law had been refusing to eat for a week in protest. She was used to fancy food. Now the servants sent her course meals. I didn't care. It was exactly what I had wanted. If she doesn't eat, take it away. There is no need to waste so much time on an old woman. If nothing major happens, you don't need to report her conditions to me. I learned of her death when the servant girl on duty had forgotten that there was someone in the backyard waiting for food and water, and didn't send anything for 5 days. When my mother-in-law died, her body was dirty, her hair clumped together and coated in dirt, and her nails had grime under them. I didn't want to look any longer, so I sent someone to bury her in a random spot. This news was somehow known to the emperor. He was enraged and said that I had abused the mother of the deceased war god. He punished me with a light sentence and sent me down to the mortal realm for reflection. It was exactly what I wanted. Life in the mortal realm was carefree. I finally understood why Caspian wanted to stay there. One day, while drinking at a tavern on the side of the road, I met a young scholar who was traveling to the capital for the imperial examination. He was very handsome and he was too shy to look me in the eye while we were talking. I thought he was funny. I teased him for a few days and promised to go with him to the capital for the examination. On the day before we were scheduled to leave, I saw a familiar figure. It was Lena. I hadn't gone looking for her. Instead, she was walking right into my path. In my previous life, Lena had caused me no end of trouble, and was the main culprit behind my suffering. Initially, Caspian, because we had been married for more than a century, still allowed me to live at the moon-dwelling palace. Lena liked my palace, but she didn't want to ruin her image as someone who didn't care about titles. She spent all of her days in the side room crying, making Caspian's heart ache. Lena, I will ask the elixir deity to help you. Lena grabbed Caspian's sleeves, shaking her head. Don't go asking people for my sake. I know my body well. Caspian, you don't know. I met a fortune teller. He said that it was very difficult for me to recover, and that if I were to be with someone who clashed with me, I would die even quicker. She became more and more distraught, as if she had an incurable illness. Ever since I arrived at the war god's mansion, it's been like there is a heavy stone crushing my heart and suffocating me. It is like the war god's wife is a bad omen to me. Lena does not want immortality. She just wants to stay with you while she is alive. Caspian was heartbroken and believed her. He had not only made me move to the side room, which had a very sparse amount of spiritual energy, but he also told me that I was a jinx. Lena knew that there was nothing wrong with her. The elixir she had been taking should have been enough to make her healthy again. However, she was unhappy that I was the legal wife, and she talked into Caspian's ear until he agreed to pull my bones and put them on her body. I became a useless person, while she was granted immortality. In this life, she was not going to get away with it. I made an excuse to get rid of the scholar and left in the night. I did not heed his calls. After a week of searching, I found Lena again. She was secretly following a monk to a side house. I cast a soundproof spell, and followed her secretly. As soon as Lena entered, she flipped the wooden table, her pretty face contorted in anger. You told me that if I were to obtain Faye's jade pendant, I would be able to absorb her soul and achieve a complete transformation. But I have been waiting for half a month and I haven't sensed any divine power. I have been feeling ill instead. I watched as she tried to roll up her sleeves to show the monk her arm. But instead of her usual smooth skin, there were clusters of dirty yellow hairs growing out of it. I came closer to look at the jade pendant. It was indeed my jade pendant. I had been walking in the mortal realm when I had seen the pendant disappear when I was passing by a mass grave. It looked like a yellow weasel had picked it up. Lena was trying to become immortal? But she was also trying to absorb the demonic energy of a weasel. How ironic. After all, deities are supposed to destroy demons. The monk was an evil Taoist that Lena had found. He was just making up lies. It might be that you are not absorbing it fast enough. I will help you and bless you some more. Lena looked at the monk with displeasure. Hurry up and do it. I laughed in the dark. Killing a mortal without a cause was going to incur heavenly punishment. Lena in this life hadn't done anything bad to me, and I wasn't sure if I could justify killing her. But who would have thought that she would try to speed up the absorption of the demonic energy and transform into a demon? Destroying demons does not incur any heavenly punishment, and instead one would receive blessings for benefiting the mortal world. I patiently followed Lena, watching her change. Her skin became rougher, and more coarse hairs grew from her body. Her hair started to fall out and yellowish fuzz grew instead. Her eyes, which used to be bright and lively, turned into sharp slits that would make you feel uneasy. It was not enough, not yet. Lena had demonic traits, but she hadn't committed murder. I still had my considerations. Finally, on a full moon night, Lena, out of her mind, killed the monk that had been teaching her the demonic techniques. When I arrived, Lena was sucking on his blood, her red pupils looking at me, her nose crinkling in anger for being interrupted. I attacked without hesitation. Lena screamed, then jumped to engage me in a fight. She was just a newly transformed demon, she couldn't touch me, and within a few rounds I had her on the floor in her human form. I watched as her red pupils slowly changed to black. She was spitting blood and looking at me in terror. Who are you? Why are you disrupting me? I removed my veil, revealing my face. Her face paled and she crawled back. It's you. Why are you here? You wanted to absorb my divine power. What did you think I would be here for? Lena slowly stood up in the moonlight. Her figure was eerie and grotesque. So you know. She laughed maniacally. It's too late, you know. I have already absorbed almost all of your power. Soon I will completely replace you. She quickly chanted and activated the jade pendant. The last bit of the yellow demonic energy flowed from the pendant into Lena's body. Ha 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 ha. I did it. But the next second, I watched as she turned into a yellow weasel. It was scrambling on the ground, scratching the ground in desperation. I tapped its body with my sword and laughed. Lena, I almost forgot. I had lost that pendant a long time ago. It looks like it was picked up by a weasel. I didn't wait for her to react. I finished her off with my sword. When she died, her weasel face was full of disbelief. Her little green eyes did not close even in death. I felt sorry for that yellow weasel that had been drained of all its energy. The grievances that I had for 2 lifetimes were finally dissolved when the weasel died. I finally felt relieved. I continued to enjoy myself in the mortal realm. One day when I was admiring the scenery at Mount Sumeru, I met my scholar. He had become a successful candidate and was now the prime minister. He was looking at me sadly. He didn't behave like a prime minister. You said you were going to accompany me to the capital. Where did you go? I smiled sheepishly. I don't care, you are my benefactor. I will marry you to repay you. He was being shameless. But when a pretty person is being shameless, it is hard to be angry. Instead, I was charmed. In the 3rd year I knew Ethan, I married him. I knew that deities and mortals had different lifespans, but it was fine. I could control my magic to age with him, and I could find him in every reincarnation. I was watching Ethan bathing when I was supposed to be resting, teasing him until his face turned red. I was eating a grape as I looked at him. This is what a goddess should do.